What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and today it's my number 28 team in my 2025 NFL Deep Dive Series, the New Orleans Saints. They finally made it. They finally died their miserable death in this Deep Dive Series. Now, how'd they make it this high? Well, there's my formula right here on the screen, and it's a pretty unbiased formula. So, now, here's the issue with the formula, and we'll talk about it throughout the video and the position groups and whatnot. It doesn't account for the fact that this is a team that is starting the season in a certain condition, in a certain state that it will definitely not end the season in. That being, it has some players that are still very good, that are, whether it be Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, Demario Davis, Tyrann Mathieu. These are all really good players. The chances of all of them still being on the team come the day after the trade deadline, very unlikely, because of all the cap issues that this team has had, just doing the restructuring. It's finally come back to hurt them, and that's why they struggled so much to get a head coach. Though they ended up with a pretty good one, Kellen Moore. We'll get to him. So this team is actually going to start the season at 28. The likelihood of them not ending the season as the worst team in the league is very low. I don't like to say tanking, because tanking is not what they're going to be doing. They're going to be rebuilding throughout the summer, into the fall, into the winter. And it's a huge question mark as to who's even going to be on this team when it comes to these high-end veteran players. So we'll get into that player grade aspect, but we're going to start with the coaching staff, the brand new coaching staff that they have here, and that's Kellen Moore is my 22nd ranked head coach, which is pretty good for a rookie head coach. I think he's my second highest ranked first time head coach. Spoiler alert who the first one is. I think it's pretty obvious, but he's kind of coming into one of the most undesirable situations. I think inarguably the most undesirable situation for a head coach. That's why it took so long for him to get there and for them so long to figure this out. He's dealing with a lot of issues that first-time head coaches don't really have to deal with. His starting quarterback retired after the draft. They kind of anticipated it, I would assume. That's why they drafted Tyler Shough. I thought for Kellen Moore's scheme that Jalen Milroe would have been a better pick. Personally, because you saw what he did with Justin Herbert a couple of years ago. You saw what he did with Dak Prescott, and then specifically with last year with Jalen Hurts. He really unlocked a lot of Jalen Hurts' qualities as a running quarterback, and even in the passing game. And when I saw Jalen Milroe, I thought this is like a Jalen Hurts comp for me. But they went with Tyler Shough. They went with the experience. They went with the quote most NFL ready, and I guess he feels he can lock in some of those issues that Shough has. How he handles things on the defense side of the ball, that's yet to be determined. It's always a yet to be determined thing when you deal with not only a rookie head coach, but a rookie head coach who's only ever operated on one side of the ball. I mean, he was a quarterback in the NFL. He was one of the quality quote backups, like the high IQ, low arm talent backup quarterbacks for a while there out of Boise. Became a quarterback coach really quickly, did really well, and then got a couple offensive coordinator jobs back to back, and saw some success. It's undeniable the success that he had, and I think his age also plays into him being modern with the game. That helps him out a lot, and we've seen that a lot with younger head coaches. They've seen a lot of success for the most part because they understand the more modern game. We get some of those older head coaches, specifically older offensive coaches, they kind of are stuck in their ways, I guess, for lack of a better term. So I think that as long as the rope is long here, just because of the cap situation, the cap situation is brutal here. They, like we talked about in the intro, so he's got to be coming here under the guise of, we're giving you 3-4 years to get this right. And I think that would be fair, and I think that it would put them on the right track. And he brought with him Doug Nussmeier to be his offensive coordinator.
he's a first-time offensive coordinator in the NFL. He's really only ever been a quarterback's coach, specifically a quarterback's coach with Kellen Moore, I think since like whenever Kellen Moore got the offensive coordinator job in Dallas is when Nussmeier became the quarterback's coach, converting from tight ends coach, which he was before under the Jason Garrett head coaching regime. So Nussmeier's been there really hands-on with Dak Prescott through some of his best years. He was the quarterback's coach last year with Jalen Hurts. So those two as a combination, I think it's looking really promising for Tyler Shook. And we'll get to him and some of his idiosyncrasies, for lack of a better term. They also got Scott Linehan there on their coaching staff, former Saints offensive lineman Jari Evans helping with the offensive line. So they've sort of mixed in a good combination of veteran coaches like a Linehan. You know, Nussmeier's got some experience, his first-time offensive coordinator, but I would anticipate Kellen Moore's calling the plays here. So it's kind of hard to rank Nussmeier any higher than what I did here. But the work he did with Jalen Hurts is really undeniable, which is why he gets that 24, like high 20s, you know, mid to high 20s grade. I think that this coaching staff has a real opportunity to grow together. Then you get to the defense, and this is the most divisive defensive coordinator I think that there is in the league right now. We talked about some of TFG's analysis of the Browns in the previous video. He had Brandon Staley actually ranked dead last. I have Brandon Staley ranked 18th. I think that when Brandon Staley is good, he's really good. And when he's bad, he's really bad. So to me, that balances out to being right about in the middle, right? Now, he doesn't have this elite level talent to really work with. He's in really the same kind of situation that Kellen Moore as a head coach is finding himself in with the offensive side of the ball. On the defense side of the ball, the problems sort of permeate through the whole roster, as in you don't really know long term what this roster is going to look like, because, you know, Demario Davis is a great linebacker. Brandon Staley's going to do a lot of good things with him. How long is he going to be on the team for? Cameron Jordan doesn't really have a whole lot left in the tank. He's really versatile. Brandon Staley does really well with versatile guys, but he's got Cameron Jordan at the back end of his career, probably his last year of his career, rather than at the beginning of it, which would have been much more advantageous. So what does he do with that? There's Tyrann Mathieu, who's a great player. Back end of his career, how long is he going to be there? They brought in Justin Reed and they have Kool-Aid McKinstry, but other than that, I don't really know where the high-end talent level is here long term. So it's hard to really assess the kind of impact Brandon Staley is going to be able to have, because you don't really know what this team's going to look like long term. When we get into the roster aspect of it, I think this time next year, this is going to look like a completely different roster. I think the roster turnover is going to be insane because of all the trades they're going to make between now and the trade deadline, in particular, the cuts they're going to make, trying to save some cap space, the amount of people they're going to be bringing in free agency, the way they're going to execute things in the draft. It's a weird situation for this coaching staff to be put into. And I think short term, they've sort of been set up to fail. And I think, luckily for them, I think the organization has enough sense to acknowledge that that's the case for them and isn't going to just be a one-and-done coaching staff. They're sort of anticipating, okay, this is them about testing where the younger guys on this team sort of fit in, and then figuring out the value of these veteran players with bigger contracts and how to move them out of those positions. But I think from a foundation aspect, Kellen Moore getting this opportunity, this is actually, in a weird way, it almost works into his favor as an early first-time head coach, because you've seen first-time head coaches get 1-2 years and the team hasn't performed and then they're gone. This is a situation where it's one of the rare situations where, because the organization is so bad, they know it, he's going to get a minimum 3 or 4 years. So I'm looking forward to this.
So this is the time of the video when we would have our ad reads, but I don't have ad reads yet. And why is that? Because I need you guys to keep liking the videos. I need you guys to keep subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. Push out the algorithms and raise my presence in the eyes of the YouTube overlords so they can start giving me lots of monies. And by lots of monies, I mean pennies, because that's how much they pay per view. But let's get back to the videos.
With the 40th pick in the draft, they took Tyler Shough, the quarterback out of Louisville. Now, he gets a 75 grade for me. It's tied for 28th. He's not the worst quarterback in the world, because I think kind of like he's almost like the quarterback version of what we just talked about with Brandon Staley. When he's good, he's really good. And when he's bad, he's really bad. Comically bad. Absolutely comically bad. But man, he makes some really, really good plays, you know, navigating the pocket, making the right decision, having some patience. And then there's just times where you're looking at him going, dude, what the hell are you doing? Like, he had 21 big time throws at Louisville last year that classified as big time throws. His adjusted completion percentage was 75.1. His deep ball and intermediate accuracy and execution was very good. He gets a C in short passes and an F in pressure with his 8 turnover worthy plays, which you'd think would be worse, but that's a consistent level for him, is that 8 to 10 turnover worthy plays in his college career. And it's just because when the pressure is on, when you get to him, when you blitz him, when he gets like this panic, and then he tries too hard to make a big time play. He's trying too hard to, it's almost like he's outsmarting himself in a way. Because, you know, when he is kept clean, when he has that time to see the field and navigate the field, he's really good at going through his progressions. He's really good at getting to that second and third read on the field. Play action is kind of, it is what it is. But his ability to push the ball down the field into that like 15 plus yard completion area, that's a really good quality for him to have. And he has the ability to do it. He just will play with this absurd level of delusion almost, that he thinks that he can make a big time play in every single situation, and it seems to always backfire, specifically when he's under pressure. And that pressure can come from really anywhere. There's no real place where he is better against it than at others, whether it's off the edge, whether it's up the B gap, through the A gap. It's just not consistent. Now, he gets an NFL quality offensive line, an offensive line that is still growing, still trying to find its way, but has some really good pieces on it. So maybe Kellen Moore puts together an offense that works for him, that keeps him upright and keeps him confident. You know, lots of timing plays, you know, 3 steps, balls out, you know where the ball needs to go, simplify the reads, and, you know, maybe max protect. Maybe there's going to be some max protection opportunities here for the Saints on the offensive side. You know, they'll leave in some tight ends to block, you know, even though they don't really have those types of bodies. Maybe they go to that sort of direction just to get Tyler Shough going. There is an competition per se happening at the quarterback position here with Spencer Rattler and Jake Haener. I think Rattler's really the only one that can realistically find himself as the starter, because he has the starting experience. But I think that for the age of Tyler Shough, you take him in the beginning of the second round, you almost have to start him, especially knowing that if you go 2-15 this year, that you're not in any threat of losing your job, and then you just take the best quarterback in the next draft. But maybe Tyler Shough, maybe you put together an offensive system that makes Tyler Shough play outside of what you are going in expecting, and this team drastically overachieves because of his play. Maybe Atlanta and Carolina underachieve. Maybe Tampa takes a step back and Tyler Shough is there, you know, making smart decisions, making big time throws, and you've been able to find ways to eliminate his mistakes. with the way that you design the offense that you are in this somehow. And I don't know how likely that is, but I do think that there's a possibility of it. I think there's definitely a possibility that could end up happening. Because Tyler Shough has an upside to him that it could realistically happen for him this early, because he is the most pro-ready. He was probably the most pro-ready quarterback out of everybody, the most well-rounded in terms of his abilities. And if you can, again, create like a faster-paced offense, which like Kellen Moore can definitely do. We saw him do it with Philadelphia. And, use the tight ends and the running backs out of the backfield in the passing game, the way that he did so well with Barkley and Dallas Goedert. And you add that in there with Foster Moreau and Jawan Johnson, Alvin Kamara. There's some guys there that can help Tyler Shough have some of those check down opportunities for him, where if you just drill it into his head that not every play has to be a touchdown, because he sort of plays with that mentality too often, and that's how he ends up in those comically bad situations that really haunted him throughout the entire draft process when people started to discover him once he started to get a name. But I think people also have to realize that a lot of scouts of a lot of teams seem to really like Tyler Shough and felt that they could coach the bad out of him, which is why he goes 40 and not in the 3rd, 4th, or 5th round like we saw other guys go, where maybe coaches and scouting teams felt that the downsides to those players were just not something that they would be able to be coached out of as easily as Tyler Shough would, without, and on top of that, not having the upside of what coaching those bad qualities and those bad tendencies out of the quarterback could then yield in terms of positive results. Moving on to the weapons now, and they're 22nd in the league in their weapons. Some really good quality players, but then it's just some obvious places where they're really lacking. We'll start with their wide receiver 1, and that's Chris Olave. He gets an 89 grade for me. Just riddled with injuries, unfortunately. So, to me, he's one of the better wide receivers in the league when he's healthy. The concern becomes, do they feel like his health can hold up? And if he gets another concussion or whatever, that's the end for him. Pessimistic, but significant. I think that's why the Saints are openly, at least from the sounds of it, shopping him around. Kind of. That teams have been inquiring about him. Now, they're not going to just give him away, but I think if a team offers them a pretty decent return on him, that they'll have to listen to that trade offer and take it very seriously. He does execute really well. He had a 3% drop rate last year. Even when he wasn't playing, his contested catch rate was pretty high as well, 66.7%, a 91.2 passer rating when he's targeted. Did most of his work from the outside, took just less than a third of his snaps from the slot, but having that versatility need be, I think is a great asset for him to have. And he's going to go and he's going to be able to attack corners, he's going to be able to attack safeties, run good routes, use sneaky speed. He was really somebody who, when you look back at his college career in particular, coming into the league, I don't know if people really anticipated him coming out and being the high-level performer that he was when healthy. But all you gotta do is look at what Justin Fields did with and without Chris Olave in college, and there was a significant drop-off in Justin Fields' performances at Ohio State when Chris Olave was not playing with him. So there's something to be said about how Chris Olave can elevate a quarterback by just being a disciplined, reliable target out there. And I think that's going to be something that can help Tyler Shough. You're just hoping, again, that Olave can just find a way to stay on the field. They have Rashid Shaheed, who's more of like a gadget type player. You're going to see him on a lot of jet sweeps. He'll line up in the backfield. He'll do a lot of motion, a lot of bubble screens. He's the guy that you want to get the ball in his hands really quickly and let him do some run after the catch. Again, tunnel screens, that kind of thing. A lot of misdirection involving him. Let him use his speed. He will push the ball down. He will push down the field and on deep routes. You've seen him execute really well on some seam routes at certain times in his career. His size and his skill set doesn't really dictate that he's going to be a traditional wide receiver probably ever. But I think he definitely has a role in an offense, especially when you get a creative offensive coordinator. And I think Kellen Moore will really enjoy using him. I think bouncing him off of they don't really have anyone else like him on the team. You know, they're a team that has like these specialized players, you know, like Taysom Hill's another one, and he's sort of on the back end now, but him and Shaheed almost sort of go hand in hand with when they're on the field, they could really be doing anything. So that's something that the defense has to be cognizant of at the very least, and that's so rare in guys who aren't considered like these high-level elite talents for a defense to have to specifically game plan around them. They have the veteran Brandon Cooks returning to the team here. Just not the guy that he used to be. You know, he was kind of like smaller, speedy guy, and now at the back end of his career, couple injuries, just some regression, but I think it's a good veteran presence to have, especially when you look at the rest of the room. Cedric Wilson, another kind of veteran guy. Dante Pettis, Kevin Austin, and Bub Means. They never really been anything in the league. So you want to get somebody who's at least produced. Somebody who can go out there, do everything for you, that you don't have to worry about him making sort of brain dead mistakes from inexperience. It's good to have that veteran presence out there and have the adult in the room. And you hope Brandon Cooks can sort of take on those qualities. Alvin Kamara is one of the best running backs out of the backfield when it comes to passing situations. I think he still is. I'm probably higher on Alvin Kamara than most people are at this stage in his career. I just think that this has been a bad situation for a couple of years now that has been bailed out by just some luck, but they haven't seen a lot of real team success, and I think he's suffered because of that. I feel like the running back almost always suffers because of that. We saw it with Saquon Barkley in New York, where his production wasn't really reflective. His effort wasn't really reflective of what his talent level ended up still being, and you saw that in Philly. I don't know that Alvin Kamara wouldn't benefit from a change in scenery in that sense. How much he's going to yield back, I mean, a team will probably give a 4th round pick for him. A team like Denver, maybe. I think that could be something that's on the table at some point throughout the summer into the early fall. They did have some breakout players here. You know, the Juwan Johnson as a tight end has been solid, but Foster Moreau really showed up for them. And his expanded role in this offense coming into this year, where he's going to be slotted in. If they should slot him into that Dallas Goedert role we saw from the previous year in Philadelphia with Kellen Moore. He could be, I anticipate him, you know, the targets 42, catches 32. A healthy season, I think that he could very much be into that 65 catch range with 80, 90 targets. You know, because 136.2 passer rating when he's targeted is an absolutely absurdly high passer rate for a quarterback to have when targeting anybody. He was great in pretty much every aspect of being a receiving tight end last year. He played in line. He got a quarter of his snaps from the slot split out, and that was when Juwan Johnson got to come in. So he's another guy, another interesting little weapon where it's going to allow Tyler Shough to play a little bit faster, not have to hold the ball so long, because you're going to have these tight ends that are out there. You're going to have a guy like Rashid Shaheed out there. You're going to have Alvin Kamara. You're going to have Taysom Hill. Even though Taysom Hill's contributions aren't, again, high end, like I said when talking about him just a few minutes ago, these guys are, from a specialized perspective, are actually really perfect for what they have in Tyler Shough right now, and will go a long way to helping Tyler Shough sort of work out those negative aspects of his game. Granted, if they were to lose Alvin Kamara, there is a significant drop-off after him in terms of the ability in the receiving game. But in terms of the running game, they have some pretty good depth here for like these true running backs. And again, Kamara gets a good grade for me, an 87. It's the 23rd ranked running back room because you just don't know how much Kamara is going to be working in it, right? So it's hard to give him his full just due. When you know Kendre Miller is going to get some carries, you know Devin Neal, who they just drafted, is going to get some work. You know that Clyde Edwards-Helaire they picked up, if he finds a way to stay on the team, bounces back and forth, I'm sure, between practice squad and the team, he's going to get something. And I think the ever-looming, are they going to trade Alvin Kamara, is going to be over his head for a lot the entire time. This is the first team also, before we get into Kamara, where we're seeing the running game like enhancement bonus. I don't know what we're calling it, but it's when you have somebody who's not a traditional running back, whether it be a quarterback like Lamar Jackson, or in this case, Taysom Hill, who adds to the run game, who sort of gives you like a little bit of a boost in terms of your rush game overall grade. Especially with the tush push and some of those designed runs, that Jalen Hurts could do. Look for Taysom Hill to get some snaps like that and help elongate some drives. And, it doesn't take the tush push out of play now. So if Kellen Moore ever wants to bring that over from Philadelphia and institute it here, he's got his guy that could definitely pull it off in Taysom Hill. But going back to Alvin Kamara, he's still a good back. He got about 214 carries, I believe, last year, 950 yards, scored 6 times, 52 first downs, inside, outside. He's a great back no matter where you give him the ball. You want him to do the zone runs. You want him to be able to use his vision. You want to be able to press the offensive line, use some cutback lanes and all that. That's really where he's a lot better. And it allows him to work inside and outside and he's really good at making decisions quickly. He can beat linebackers. He can outrun linebackers, force safeties and defensive backs to miss tackles and everything in the open field. He's still got the ability to be a very tricky back, and I think that sleeping on him is a mistake. At least maybe if you're a Saints fan, maybe you don't get as much out of him because maybe he only plays 5 to 6 games for you this year, while he goes and plays another dozen for somebody else. But it wouldn't be really all lost because you invested in Kendre Miller and you've invested in Devin Neal, both in the draft the last couple of years, who I don't mind as these young running backs. Devin Neal is one of my higher graded running backs coming into this draft in terms of just his pure running back ability. He got a higher grade than I gave to Quinshon Junkins. Junkins just sort of gets him on the being a more well-rounded player, like a more well-rounded 3-down player. Devin Neal is lesser of a 3-down running back. But I think a good, healthy competition between him and Kendre Miller in particular, could yield a really great result. And you perhaps, even in the intermediate, you don't lose a whole lot in terms of running back quality, because I think both of these guys have some upside here where one of them could and should end up being a NFL quality starting running back. Again, it's just figuring out which one that is and how quickly do you get them on the field, because I don't know that Alvin Kamara, unless he starts the season Saquon Barkley-esque last year under Kellen Moore, that he's going to be around. So how quickly you get him out the door at that point? How much are you going to wait for Alvin Kamara to have that Saquon Barkley performance before you just go, maybe it's not just never going to happen here? We need to start assessing Miller and Neal a little bit more than what we're having the opportunity to do right now. One of the big advantages that Tyler Shough is going to have is that he's actually getting the 6th best pass blocking offensive line in the league coming into this year. They're tied for 17th in run blocking, which is a perfect spot for them to be. We'll talk about the last two first-round picks that they made. It's left tackle Kelvin Banks Comes in and gets an 80 grade for me as a left tackle. That's a very good grade because, pass blocking at the next level is not easy, but I think he has all the tools to really make this work here in New Orleans. He only gave up 1 sack, 10 pressures. It took 7 penalties on 538 snaps. But he's got all the makings of being a really great tackle at the next level. I think he has guard capabilities if it all sort of falls apart. And because, Trevor Penning is sort of sitting and hovering over top of him here as sort of a swing lineman, but he hasn't really worked out the tackle spot. Certainly not as a pass blocker. I think Kelvin Banks is coming in as a significantly better pass blocker. I think Trevor Penning's opportunity is going to come as a run blocker. And that's where he sort of enters into the competition here. But I think the competition is going to be with Dylan Raduns, who they brought in from Tennessee, who was clearly brought in because they wanted to maximize the pass blocking capabilities on this offensive line. But he's a significantly worse run blocker than Trevor Penning. So if Penning can show that he is a much better pass blocker as a guard, then there's a possibility that Trevor Penning can step in and be the starting left guard here, and that could actually raise the quality of the offensive line up a little bit. Opposite of that is Cesar Ruiz, who hasn't really panned out the way that they were hoping he would, but he's still been pretty solid. I don't know that he's viewed as a long-term answer. I think he's sort of just the best of what they have right now, especially because they gave Saldiveri an opportunity. That didn't really work out. Saldiveri and Penning sort of fall under the same umbrella here, where they're going to be good starting, low-end starting caliber run blockers, but they just don't offer anything in pass blocking, and they really need the pass blocking help because, like we just covered with their quarterback that they're getting right now, Tyler Shook, is god-awful when he's pressured. So you want to keep him clean as much as possible, and so you'll sacrifice aspects of the run game here in order to appease the pass blocking. And then Eric McCoy, who got injured last year, was having a career year as a center. He was the best center in the league before he got hurt. He gets an 88 pass grade, 92 run grade. You hope that the injury doesn't cause him to have too much of a setback, but what a performance. The performances he was having early in the season, it was undeniable, and then just to pick up that injury was just tragic for him. The other guy is the right tackle, Talisi Fuaga, last year's first-round pick. He's coming in with a pretty good run game pedigree here at right tackle. Not a lot of gap ability, but the zone ability was really good last year. And that's a big part of that working out with Alvin Kamara in particular, who's a great zone runner. They took 413 snaps last year. Not great in gap. Needs to perhaps work on that if that becomes a feature of this offense. But it's an offensive line that when you have these two tackles, you've invested really highly in them. 2 top 20 picks, a top 10 pick in Kelvin Banks, I believe. I think he was the 9th pick of the draft. I don't think they traded back. It shows that they have a clear vision of what they want the identity of this team to be. They want to build a strong offensive line, and Kellen Moore is bringing that over from what they had in Philadelphia, where so much of what he was able to do was because the offensive line provided so many opportunities for the offense to execute plays, to have some more drawn out things, to be a little bit more creative, and then to just also be that, lunch pail, blue collar type of a team in certain situations as well, particularly again with the tush push, some of those run plays. So just the more straightforward stuff that they did so well. They did so well because, Saquon Barkley renaissanced his performances, but also because the offensive line was there to step up. And when you have a guy like Eric McCoy who can be that Jason Kelsey for you, now you're looking for the Jordan Mailata and the Lane Johnson there. And I think specifically going after Kelvin Banks and inheriting Talisi Fuaga the way they did, it shows that they're trying to build the exact same things here. And the potential of it all is still very good. Dylan Raduns or someone on the interior picking up an injury, I'd be a little concerned because you would lose some in the pass blocking there, but I think losing somebody on the interior offensive line for pass blocking purposes is a lot less concerning than if they lost Banks or Fuaga and then had to play Trevor Penning or Landon Young at tackle. Then I would start to sort of ring the alarm bells a bit and perhaps say, okay, now Tyler Shook is in a lot of trouble. But it's a good foundation. I really like it. I think it's an extremely underrated aspect of this team, and it's why I think a huge reason why they didn't just end up being ranked last for me is because they have these aspects of their team, specifically on the offensive side of the ball, where if you have an offensive line that can pass protect this well, at least on paper, it's really hard for me to believe that they'll be the worst team in the league. Overall, it is my 29th ranked offense. They're 24th with the offensive coordinator, 30th in pass offense, tied for 23rd in run offense. Again, it's really the quarterback that this is dependent on and not really having that true number 2 wide receiver. Though I do think that this team, just based upon, again, the specialized skill sets of the weapons and the creativity of the offensive coordinator and the offensive coaching, I think they'll be able to put up some yards and some points. They'll be able to manufacture a lot of touches for certain guys and certainly statistically outperform, I think, this 29th overall ranking.
So now we're going to move over to the defensive side of the ball, and they have some really underlying sleeper type players, in my opinion, that I actually really like that don't get the love that others do. And I think that there's some lesser players who are riding off their name value. So we'll start here with the defensive line.
The defensive line group is actually 28th against the 28th pass rush and 28th run defense. It's a group where, I mean, they have some weird depth here where you don't really know who's going to be playing and how much they're going to be playing. The guys that I know for sure are going to be playing are the 3 guys I've highlighted. And we'll start with Carl Granderson, who is a sneaky good player. I think just he falls so far under the radar. He's 35th in pass rush win percentage last year, which is, that's a high end number. That's a high end to middle number 2 pass rusher for a team. 46 hurries. He had 3 batted balls. Takes most of his snaps from outside the tackle. 9 sacks and 61 pressures is nothing to be sneezed at. I think he outperformed a lot of guys that people will say are better than him, and he did a lot more of the winning on his own, and he was able to produce comparable statistical output to those guys. I'm looking at you, Trayvon Walker. I promise you this isn't the Trayvon Walker hate channel. But after you sort of, you go from him, you go from, Granderson to the interior with Nathan Shepard. And Shepard was 37th in pass rush win rate from the interior. He had 17 pressures, 11 hurries. Most of his snaps were from that 3 technique. I think he's a solid interior pass rusher. I think that if they had more talent around him, that he would, that this would look a whole lot better on this team to have him sort of be your best guy, your best interior pass rusher. But based on sort of what else they have around the team, they don't really have a high-end pass rushing type on their team, despite what people may say about, the other edge on this team, the one that actually got paid, the one that gets the hype, and that's Chase Young. He was 31st in pass rush win rate, but he's really continuing to live off the reputation of what he did at Ohio State and being the number 2 overall pick in the draft. And I think teams are just unwilling to give up on him, but he's just not giving out that true statistical output. I think between him and Carl Granderson, what you're getting is you got 2 number 2 edge rushers who are forced onto the field because you don't have anything else around them. Isaiah Foskey, total bust so far. Just when he does get opportunities, he looks like one of the worst players on the field. They drafted Fadil Diggs, who I admittedly don't really know anything about, which means how good could he possibly be? The chances of him being super good, I think, are not very high, because I didn't cover a lot of the rookie class in my assessment. So just not having really anything on him, I think, sort of says a lot. Now, you look at the rest of the interior of the defensive line, you know, Cameron Jordan is sort of like a hybrid defensive end at this point, where you're going to play him at some 4-eye, you're going to play him at some 5, 7, you know, he's going to play sort of everywhere. It's just how much of the snap count is he going to get? Brian Breezy just hasn't worked out yet, and you're hoping that he can figure it out here, but just not starting caliber, though he's going to get starting caliber reps. I look at John Ridgway and the rookie Vernon Broughton as being much better options in those passing situations and those third down pass rush situations from the interior. I actually really like them to be part of a rotation there with, you know, Shepard, Ridgway, and Broughton being like three guys who in those obvious passing situations are sort of mixed in all together to go after the passer and clap some pockets. Kalen Saunders is much more of a balanced defensive tackle. I could see him finding his way onto the field as a starter after they give Breezy this one last chance. Devon Gottschall is much more going to be like an early down nose tackle for you. I don't know that he's going to see a lot of playing time. Maybe he gets it late in games when this team's playing from behind, but overall I wouldn't expect all that much from him, though somehow the interior of this defensive line, though they don't really have a true number one guy anywhere on this defensive line, the interior aspect really does look great. Can't sleep on Carl Granderson as a run defender, one of the better edge setting run defenders in the entire league. But other than him, there really isn't a whole lot going in terms of run defense either. It's an uninspiring group. And when you have Granderson, who was 7th in stop percentage, it's at least a building block. It's at least a building block, and then you just get some breakout performances here. Maybe Brandon Staley can, you know, analytically, I guess, work out who are the best options to play next to him and maximize Granderson's abilities there as that early down edge player and turn him into a true elite level 3-down defensive end. That would be a very interesting development throughout the season, but I think at the very least this is what you're getting out of him. Now maybe Fadil Diggs is somebody who can step up big and enter into the pass rush rotation to take some of the pressure off of Granderson on some of those later downs. Or maybe Cameron Jordan has a bit of a career renaissance, you know, gets back to a top level talent ability. There's a lot of what ifs and I hope so's, and generally when you have a lot of that going on with a positional group, it doesn't end all that well. I do think that this group has some potential though, and if you can maximize some of the development here, I think by the end of the season, you know, Brian Breezy steps up and starts playing like a first round talent, actually starts playing like a quality starter, then this group can sort of get into that overall maybe top 20 area. But unless you get a giant breakout performance from Chase Young that's never been there, or Carl Granderson becomes like an elite level pass rusher, I don't really see this group being all that impactful for the Saints this year. Now the linebacker group is actually quite intriguing, and what makes it intriguing is the guy right there, the number one linebacker on the team, is Demario Davis. And I touched upon it a little bit earlier multiple times at this point that you just don't know how much longer he's going to be on the team. You know, he hasn't really regressed with age at all, like maybe slightly, but he's still playing like a high level linebacker. So it's hard to say that he's going to see much regression at any point in time significantly. If it's going to happen, it's going to be this year. but I could see him being somebody who does get traded at the deadline. I think he's the most likely to, just because I feel like they've put in some investment here in the rest of the linebacking group. But we look at Demario Davis, he gets that 84 grade in coverage and passing situations, 9 pressures, targeted 49 times, 38 catches given up. You know, he does a lot of that stuff in zone. You know, he keeps the game in front of him, and you know, is able to break up plays, is able to, you know, force a turnover every now and then. This is probably last year, you see the statistical output. That was one of his worst statistical outputs that he's had in the last couple of seasons in pass coverage or in passing situations. And it was still a really good performance for a linebacker. So there's something to be said about how great Demario Davis is. You know, he's that green dot linebacker who's going to be able to play everywhere. You know, inside in that A gap area, out in the B gap area, he's going to be able to chase guys sideline to sideline still, like he is in the run game, where he's honestly slightly better as a run defender at this point in his career. He had 89 tackles, 40 assists. He had 16 missed tackles, 11% missed tackle rate. He was 29th in the league in stops. So that's low end number 1 linebacker in both those categories. Which I guess, you know, it's expected at his age, man. Other people got to start stepping up for this Saints team. He has done a great job, though, being a leadership. He's a high IQ player, and you know what you're going to get with him each and every snap and each and every drive. He's not somebody who just mails it in. His complement is Pete Werner, who I actually really like. I think he's a quality starter as well. A big piece of why it's the 12th ranked linebacking group in terms of coverage. Gave up 34 catches, but only 208 yards and 87.8 passer rating. That's a really good quality to have. That's sure tackling in the open field on tight ends and running backs when he's had that responsibility. That's keeping things locked up in zone coverage in those middle zone situations when guys are catching the ball over the middle. He's wrapping them up immediately. So though he is getting targeted, and though he only had forced 7 incompletions on his 41 targets, those yards being that low does reflect well on him, because you don't really expect linebackers to be these absolute monster juggernauts in pass coverage. Where Pete Werner also is, again, starter quality for me, is in the run game. He was 60th in stop percentage, though. He kept the missed tackle percentage under 10%. But he needs to improve in the overall stops percentage, you know, in those key situations, those key third downs, third and shorts. That's where he needs to start stepping up. I think the size could be an issue there. But that's one of the places where improvement is needed. If he can improve by about 15 to 20 slots, he can get into that 80, that low 80 range in terms of a grading for next season. Some of the depth pieces here at linebacker, you look at Nefi Sewell, I think is severely underrated. I like him as a third option, a third rotational piece. He can sort of do it all. He's definitely the best option to come in passing situations. They drafted Danny Stutzman, who I like as him coming in as an early down run stuffing linebacker option. Not great in pass coverage at all, but I think, again, he's somebody who Demario Davis gets traded. I think Stutzman's the one that sort of makes up all those snaps that are going to be missed by Davis. Because again, that's really why they drafted him. They drafted him, I would assume, to be a Demario Davis replacement, if not a Pete Werner replacement, and then Werner becomes the Demario Davis replacement either way. I don't really think they see a lot of. I don't think anyone in the NFL really sees that much upside in Nefi Sewell. I think my grades are about as high as you'll ever see for him. But I think that he's a quality player. I think he can be, he'll always be, I think, featured as a special teams guy. But I think he can be somebody who can be a legitimate third linebacker, 3 linebacker, 4 in a given situation. Stutzman's got a lot to prove. He'll come in as a solid early down guy, like I said, in the run game, but he's still, as it stands right now, he's still linebacker 4 for me on this roster. So it'll be interesting to see how this group evolves, how they distribute snaps, and who becomes what in what situation, especially when Demario Davis is no longer there. They will see a significant drop-off in both grades when he does. The run defense will probably drop somewhere to about 25, 26, and the pass coverage will drop, I would say, maybe down to 20th in the league. So there is Demario Davis is a significant difference maker even at this stage, and that's why another reason why it's what is this team going to be by the end of the year, and how much are they going to be able to stay in games at the end of the year if none of these guys, these difference makers, difference making veterans aren't there anymore. This defensive back room has been just ripped apart lately. They've lost 2 of their starters since the trade deadline of last year. Lattimore went to Washington. Adebo signed with the Giants this offseason. But they have Kool-Aid McKinstry, who fell into their laps in the second round of last year. Overall, the group is 29th, and that's a big reason of that is because Kool-Aid McKinstry just isn't ready to be a number 1 corner. He hasn't at least showed that he's ready to be a number 1 corner on any team. Man coverage, he's good. Zone coverage, he's terrible. Gave up a 91.6 passer rating. Gave up 2 touchdowns, 400 yards on 33 catches. He took 624 snaps, which I think was the 4th most out of all the corners on this team. If you work out up until the point where Marshawn Lattimore was traded. So now that he's going to be the guy that has to follow around the number 1 receiver, that's a huge responsibility to take on, considering that just really wasn't his role at all yet in his rookie season. He was sort of just being passed around, slowly worked in, and now he's sort of being thrown to the wolves here because they did not do a good job at all of bringing in anyone else for this group. I mean, Isaac Yiadom is there, who is just, to me, he's a good number 3 outside corner, but the fact that he's very likely going to get some starter reps, unless somebody like Quincy Riley, the rookie, significantly steps up, he's going to get started because you got Alontae Taylor, who actually gave him a really good run grade, 67 passer grade, 358 snaps out of the slot. He was bullied last year by teams. Now, granted, he took 358 slot snaps last year. He had 35 catches, 2 touchdowns. He did have 11 pass breakups. His passer rating when playing in the slot was 112.7. Had 6 penalties. He's the slot guy that they have. It's him and Ugo Amadi that are going to be competing for that slot role. Alontae Taylor has the upside over Amadi, but it needs to be realized. This needs to be the year he steps up. Now, you were hoping coming into this season that he was going to be solely put into the slot role, but just by the way that this entire defensive back group has worked out, it doesn't look like that's going to be the case because they just don't have any true next best outside corner for Kool-Aid McKinstry to play opposite of. But they do have Tyrann Mathieu, who can come up and play in the slot. They do have Ugo Amadi, who can come and play in the slot. They have Isaac Yiadom, who can play in the slot as well, though he'd be more of an outside corner, you would hope, so that Alontae Taylor can play nickel. But then they have Jonas Sanker, same sort of thing. So then you get to Justin Reed, and Justin Reed and Tyrann Mathieu are basically carbon copies of one another. He got 199 slot snaps last year. He can certainly play more than that. 547 of his snaps came from in the box, which is, just hybrid slot role. And only 350 of his snaps came out of true safety. So Justin Reed can come up, play closer to the line of scrimmage. Does that push Alontae Taylor outside again? So there's just a whole lot of questionable decisions here. Like, I don't know why they brought in Justin Reed unless they definitely planned on getting rid of Tyrann Mathieu. Justin Reed's a good player. He gave up 4 touchdowns last year, had 2 picks, 3 pass breakups, at 107.3 passer rating when targeted. So he was giving up some pretty significant plays here. I think he's still one of the better pass coverage safeties in the league when he plays in the deep zone areas. He just plays so close to the offensive line sometimes that he's put into situations that I don't think he has necessarily the athleticism to keep up with. But I think when he's playing in those 350 snaps that he took at safety, I thought that he was doing very well at that, and he was pretty good at run support as well because he was given so many opportunities to be that. And it's sort of the same can be said about Tyrann Mathieu, I think, because Matthew's just older, so he's a little bit lesser at all those things. But I think that them moving on from Tyrann Mathieu and maintaining Jordan Howden's opportunities would be really nice. 73 pass coverage grade, 80 run support. I really like him. And then they drafted Jonas Sanker as well. Definitely with the intention of them not having Tyrann Mathieu and them need to find a third safety for this defense. And how Brandon Staley goes about figuring out what they're doing in the secondary at all with any of these guys outside of Kool-Aid McKinstry being your number one outside corner, that's going to be his true test here. Because they don't really have the talent on paper. 29th in pass coverage, 17th against the run, which is a perfectly fine rating to have, but you got to be better in pass coverage if you're a defensive back, because the run support impact that defensive backs have is just really not that high. So overall, it's my 28th ranked defense, 29th against the pass, 29th against the run, 18th in defensive coordinator. Now, if they get, this could very well be, by the end of the season, the worst defense in the league. Why? Because, well, Demario Davis gets traded, Tyrann Mathieu gets traded. They can't really figure out a second cornerback outside of Kool-Aid McKinstry, and Brandon Staley gives you more bad than good in terms of strategizing and game planning very easily. So there's not a whole lot of room for error for this defense's grade, which, again, down the stretch, I think is really going to affect the overall performance of the team. Now, getting to the schedule, they did have the second easiest schedule in the league here, though I'm still going to say under on 6.5 wins. Now, why is that? You look at the first half of the schedule, there's not a lot of opportunity there for them. Playing a lot of tough teams. San Francisco, Buffalo, Chicago, Tampa Bay. New England, I think, is going to be pretty good. Seattle on the road is going to be a real tough out. They do have Arizona week 1, so they could catch them at home. With when they have their complete roster. The Giants, what's that going to look like when they get the Giants at home early in the year while they're trying to figure out their stuff. But the second half of the year, particularly those last 4 games, those are all very winnable games. They get Atlanta and Tennessee on the road, but they're question marks. The Jets at home, Jets are coming up faster than you guys think in this deep dive series. And Carolina, where you don't really know what they're going to produce for you, especially on the defensive side of the ball. The problem is when you get those games, you're getting them at the end of the year when 5 weeks before that, 6 weeks before that, Alvin Kamara, Cesar Ruiz, Demario Davis, Cam Jordan, Chase Young, and Tyrann Mathieu, they could all be gone. Half of them could be gone. For sure. Half of them will be gone for sure. All of those guys might be gone. And then what does your team look like going into those last 4 games? Now, all of a sudden, those games that are kind of like, you're right on the fringe, all of a sudden aren't fringe games at all because you're so depleted roster-wise with the trades and injuries, and quarterback performance might be really poor, and Jake Haener might be your starting quarterback for those last 4 games because Tyler Shook stunk the joint out, just couldn't make a smart decision. Spencer Rattler couldn't get his ego under control. Like the old high school Rattler came out. It could all be falling apart by the end of that year. So those 4 games, that's what the roster they have now. If they keep the roster they have now, I think they get 2 to 7 wins for them on the roster. But by the time I think that comes around, I think they'll be lucky to have 2-3 wins at most this year, unfortunately. So I'm still betting the under despite the strength of schedule dictating that they should be able to finish with somewhere 5, 6 to 7 wins. It's just not going to happen. It just won't happen. So overall, they are my 28th ranked team, 22nd ranked head coach, 29th offense, 28th defense, and that total offense, total defense could all be dead last by the trade deadline, depending on their moves.
And there it is, my number 28 team going into the 2025 NFL season. It's the New Orleans Saints. Again, you guys made it this far. Subscribe, hit the like, help me with the YouTube gods. And this is going to be the worst team in the league by my prediction by the end of the year. Let's hope that Tyler Shook shows up, though. Tyler Shook. He should be entertaining. But, you know, Arch Manning looks more and more like he's following in Granddad's footsteps and going to New Orleans. So I'll see you guys with the next video next time.